must say, don't be scared. Don't be scared because everything is a teacher, everything is a messenger. And your agency and your sovereignty is to act or not on it. If you decide to act, have someone helping you. It could be a spouse, a friend, a coach, a therapist, or maybe just a journal. But find ways for other people to also be part of that journey. I think a lot of it is that we stay on our little corner. We're ashamed of asking for help because I'm supposed to be doing it all by myself. Don't do that. There's a reason why you have these people in your life. But be patient as well. And I'm going to go back to what you said earlier. Don't judge yourself. It's okay not to be 100% high achiever all the time. It's okay to break down. Sometimes it's just a redirection. And most times it's a messenger of something that needs to change in your life.
Welcome to The Reframed, from the couch to the conversation, where we dive deep into the human experience of healing and transformation, giving you the knowledge, skills, and resources to not only manage the increasing stress of the world, but center you into your sense of self so you can be the change you want to see in the world. I am your host, Rebecca Molmond, trauma therapist turned coach. In today's episode, we look at the process of fiercely redefining yourself and how that directly impacts your definition of success. Mayda's life story and professional career are rich in valuable experiences, guiding high-end executives to find more fulfillment and purpose in their lives as well as their careers. We look at the difference of the masculine versus the feminine styles in approaching leadership, diving deep into the question of who am I and the importance of emotional self-awareness, using the compass of your likes and your dislikes to uncover core archetypes in defining yourself, and clarity on some strategies around leaving a toxic work environment. There is so much to go over today. So without further ado, Mayda Poc.
Maya, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here today. And I've really been looking forward to this conversation around fiercely redefining self and success. And it's such a rich topic. And I really value your perspective and where you come from diving into this and teasing it apart. And I'd really like for you to be able to share a little bit of your incredibly rich and textured history on how it's led you to where you're at today and really set you up for powerfully helping people in this process.
And thank you, Rebecca, for inviting me. And thank you for also giving me this opportunity to share, because this is something that is very dear to me. And definitely my personal history has led me to this moment today where I probably have lived a lot of different lives and probably gleaned a lot of different tools and material and upsets and also tips as well on how to navigate these defining moments. So a bit about me. I grew up in Syria and in France. I was one of those people who push themselves to do more, because that's how I was educated. I had to be the first in class, the best in class all the time. And so I have 3 master's degrees. I speak 4 languages, all that kind of stuff. It's very nice on paper. I don't know how that helps in life, but it's nice on paper. But life led me to work in France, then in the UK, then in New York City, where now I live, in finance. And after 16 years in finance, and again, pushing, I'm not listening to my body and wanting to prove myself and wanting to be out there because it's survival of the fittest type of, my body decided that no, that you need to sit down for a second and you need to listen. And of course, I did not do that, because why on earth would my body be an obstacle towards, I don't know what it was looking for, but towards producing. And so comes a time where it's a very bad strategy, by the way, for all your audience here. Do not ever do that. Because 2 years later, I collapsed on the street, and I collapsed not out of exhaustion. I could have worked for a long time. I collapsed because I couldn't breathe anymore. And the message after that was I had cancer and it was quite advanced. But I still didn't listen, because I had an an important job. Or so I thought. I was pretty senior. I needed, people dependent on me, and absolutely not. Nothing is going to stop me, not quite an intensive chemotherapy. So I continued working. I modified a bit my schedule. I was working a bit more from home. My doctor was very impressed with me when I said I would take the day of chemotherapy off, because that was the only thing I gave myself permission to do. You can fool the body, you can fool yourself for as long as you want, but when you have these kind of messages, and this is why I mentioned don't wait, that's why I'm here to tell you don't wait. When you have these kind of messages, then it's about time to do something about it. And for me, it meant we stop everything right here, right now. There is no more negotiating with myself or bargaining or saying I will do it differently next time, or because it didn't feel for me that there was going to be a second chance at that point. So I just left my job and don't do what I did because I had no idea what to do. And there was a lot of anxiety around that, especially for someone who defined herself with a job. That was my whole life. So when you take this out, who am I? Do I even have the right to exist? I'm not bringing money. What am I? It's a long road, but you end up finding yourself. I'm here to tell you, don't worry about that. And then things started unfolding for me. And at some point I started meeting, like this hero's journey, right? You meet helpers. And at some point I started meeting new people and new coaches and spiritual teachers, and things started to get together to where I am now, where I am a career coach. I work with executives. I work mainly with women as well, in finance and highly senior positions as well, mid to senior position as well. And my mission, in a way, is to help them find a bit more of an ease and zen in what they do, because we still live in societies where work is going to be the main definition of who we are and the main definition of success. And that's what we're going to talk about. And it's important to feel okay in your career, to feel ambitious, to want as well a career that works for you, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons. And this is where I come in, as in, why are you doing this? And if you're doing this for your parents or for, this kind of very much outside of your control type of thing, it's okay to do it for your kids and your parents, but as long as you know why you're doing it. And it's not to overly prove yourself, because it's quite literally a bottomless pit of it never ends. And I'm not sure that it's actually really for your higher self or your highest good at that point.
Absolutely. I would love, and I know we were going to start off and talk about redefining the self and exploring that, but I would at some point love for you to address what it looks like for women to step into powerful leadership positions and how that might look different for a woman to move through that and show up in that position versus the example that we've had of men doing this. Not that that's bad, but I think we're built differently, and maybe just some insight on what that would look like to do it in a way that still has the potency to it, but is in alignment with being a woman and how we move through the world.
Absolutely. We don't function like men. We have different cycles. We have our hormonal makeup is different. And as you know, hormones do all the job. So definitely we cannot function like men, but we can learn from them the same way we can teach them as well. So for women, it could look like know your values, know what are the things that you are passionate about or that you feel you can make an impact in. And most often than not, women come from a different perspective. They come from a perspective of collaboration. Their leadership is more that than a man, which is generally more around planning and managing and what have you. And so the idea for women when they step into these roles is to understand that, number one, they will still need to adapt to the masculine way of doing things. there are good things in that. There are a lot of good things in that. And the idea is to take what works for them, and it's not going to work for everyone. And the next part is they are there to inspire others. I'm not saying that they are role models, but if they decide to do that, they are there to inspire others. And they are there to show up in a way that is very individual to them. So they are not just a product of their company. They are not just a title, but they are an individual, a soul, a human being who is there because she knows why she is there. She knows what her mission is, and she's going to find ways to accomplish and to achieve her own way. And so there isn't like a mold anyway that says women do this and men do this. But the experience here is that, and the same way I would work with men as well when they are about to step into these positions, is to find a way that whatever leadership means to them, and it's a component of themselves and what the company wants, obviously, but to step into these qualities in a way that is sustainable to them. So if you're someone who, let's say, if you're someone who hates conflict and you're in a place where you're going to spend your time in conflict, then there are two things you can do. Either you quit because obviously it's not going to work, or you go into your own inner quality. And for a lot of women and for men as well, it's about sitting with the people that you are managing and leading and try to understand what is going on from their side. So you're coaching them. You're going to be a bit more collaborative, yet you are the ultimate decision maker. The difficult part for women most of the time is that their leadership is more easily questioned than it is for men. There is this idea that women are more emotional. It's not true. Men are very emotional. They just don't, when they act on it, it's good. It's just someone is pissed off, right? Oh, what a man. But when a woman goes emotional and when she says, okay, I can't do this anymore, or when she cries, it's bad. So there are ways to work around that where the mission is still there, the goals are still there, but it's about respecting as well who you are. And I think the environment today is evolving slowly though, but it's evolving to allow more of this kind of fluidity that women bring to the very rigid masculine format. Working remotely is one of those ways. Less and less FaceTime. It would be nice if we can get to that point where it's about the result and not how you do it, and integrity, obviously. But I do feel that women today have more opportunities to step up than 10 years, 15 years, or even 30 years ago. And I think we owe it really to all these women pioneers who kind of didn't have it the easy way to get there. It's very, very difficult to impose yourself and to be influential and lead when it's a bunch of men you're asked to lead.
Yeah. Well, and I think that really goes to what we were also talking about today, is redefining sense of self and knowing who we are in authenticity. And then by nature, it redefines or takes a different perspective on what success looks like.
Absolutely. I think it's very, very important today, and especially after everything we have been through over the last 3 years, to have a better sense of who you are, as in outside a definition from society, outside what your community says you should be, or even outside what your family says you should be. You can still be a mother, you can still be a CEO, you can still be an executive or a stay-at-home mom. It doesn't matter in itself, as long as this is what you decide you want to be. And it's difficult because, well, first, the road to know thyself is a lifelong, and you're going to be very surprised, and you're going to, go back and forth. It's the ebb and flow of how you see yourself, and life is going to send you challenges that will challenge as well your opinion of yourself, which is very good. It's an invitation to evolve as well. But there are ways where we can start thinking about, who am I? And outside the title, outside the job, outside how much you make, outside how well you bake cookies, whatever it is, there are ways to do that. So I would suggest, and it's a suggestion, it's everybody does differently, but I would suggest that starting by something as simple as, what are my qualities? What are my skills, right? So you know what you're good at, you know what you do very well. Ask around you, how do you see me? And validate or not the way you are seen by others, whether it's at work. At work, there's a lot of feedback going on because it's part of the corporate trying to make themselves feel good about themselves, right? we organize feedback. Okay, fine. But try as well with the people that know you well, and ask them, what do you like about me? What is it that you don't like about me? You will start getting a good picture about how you are perceived, and also how you project yourself as well to others. And from there, the other main part that we discussed is you will start also noticing how you react to things from this kind of path that you're taking. So you start by saying, well, I'm generous. Okay, that's awesome to be generous. That's great. And then how does that show up in my life? And all of a sudden you realize this is self-awareness, that some people take advantage of you. And some people, some places you're actually really happy to give your time. From other places, no, not really. I don't want to deal with that. And you go into that this stage of emotional self-awareness. And maybe this is a good place to stop for a bit. And ask yourself, what are the good things? What are the things that make me happy? What are the things that really enrage me or really disgust me? What are the things actually I don't care either way? And don't do that only once. Do it several times. Do it at work, during different circumstances, without even being prepared. And let's see what comes up to you. And let's see what it says about you, your values, your skills, what's important for you as well, your feelings as well about things. And the more you connect to your emotions without acting on them, we will talk about that, but the more you connect to your emotions, and the more you will learn about what lights you up, what actually hates you. Yes.
Could I interject a question really quick? So during that process, that's such a beautiful process to go through. But what I've noticed with clients, and maybe you can help with this, is that because the emotional operating system is such an elusive process for a lot of people, when they have that something, even if it's a beautiful thing, right? Something really lights me up, but right dovetailed into the fabric of that emotional experience is judgment and criticism. So how can we tease those two apart?
So number one, you're not your emotions. Your emotions are messengers. So you're not an email you're sending, and you're not the email you're receiving. It's just information. So it takes time though, because this is part of this programming that we have been giving, especially. So I grew up in the Middle East, and emotions in the Middle East are a bit too much sometimes. Like everything is on the outside. I'm sure you heard about in Greece when people die, you had professional criers as well to express the emotion of grief. People get angry, people get crying, and there's a lot of joy, and everything is on the outside. In Western countries, especially in Anglo-Saxon countries, it's exactly the opposite. Is expressing an emotion is the most shameful thing that can happen. You need to cut that down. It's not manly. It's not appropriate. So the judgment comes from society and not necessarily from you. And as we are going through this road or path of, I want to understand who I am, one of the reflexes, and again, it's a muscle that needs training, is to say, it's just an emotion. It's 90 minutes. It's 90 seconds. I'm sorry, not 90 minutes, 90 seconds. It's a few minutes. It's not going to last, but I'm going to be curious and I'm going to observe. And you observe it, or at least for me, when you have this opportunity to observe it by breathing and not doing anything. And it's very short, is okay. So something happened here. Why am I so enraged? Or why am I so angry? And then you breathe through that. And it helps as well to write down. I am angry because this person did this and this and this. What does that tell me? That tells me that I didn't feel respected. That tells me that I felt that my boundaries were violated, and that is not okay with me anymore. And so what does that tell me about my values? Maybe self-respect, maybe integrity, maybe a lot of different things. But that informs a lot about who you are as well. Shame, judgment, especially when it's, in particular, when it's self-shame and self-judgment, are never helpful. Everything is feedback and everything is a teacher. So you don't judge your teacher for teaching you a material. You're just like, okay, it's information. I like it, I don't, but I can live with or without it. And same thing with emotions is to say it's part of the human experience. That's why we're here on Earth. We're not, I mean, if we are here on Earth to learn things, it gets very boring. Emotions make us feel alive. So nothing to be judged.
Thank you for clarifying that. Well, so where we were at was is seeing what lights you up, right? Seeing what really moves you from the inside out, and then being able to tease that judgment and criticism away. And then what do? Now that we have something that lights us up, is that more of that self-discovery piece of maybe finding what's organically exciting to us or organically inspiring?
It's exactly that. It's almost like your body is mapping for you what energizes you and what depletes you. Now, there are certain things that you cannot do much about it, but you will go into your inner kind of sage and try to see how you can deal with them. And the things that excite you, light you up, are, again, it's just a messenger. But this can help as well inform when you are doing something that is aligned, is the very good word, is aligned, and that you can embody. And from there, what I suggest is observe your actions. How do you react when something makes you happy and you start, I don't know, let's say you like baking. Why do you like baking? For some people, it's about assembling and creating something fun. For others, it could be because it's a shared experience. For others, it could be a way of giving to other people. And so you're going to start seeing archetypes in a way. So for some people, and there will be several, of course. So for some people, there will be people who are very analytical, like engineers and stuff, like they have this super analytical way. And this is where they thrive, by planning everything. And they like that. And this is maybe one way of defining yourself. It's not the only way, but it's one way. For other people, it could be more like a nurturer. Other people are artistic, for example. And so it doesn't mean that you need to go and have a career as an artist, but it means that these are things that can help you as well where you are to make things more aligned as well with you. So you know your alignment, and you make your environment becoming more aligned with what you like and what you don't. So again, it's not, we are such a complex puzzle of so many pieces. It takes years and years to piece together. But this is one way of starting the process, is like, oh, well, I'm a nurturer. So as a women leader, for example, how can I be a nurturer and yet hit all the company's goals, for example? You can do both. Nobody said it's either or, but you're creating a new path for other nurturers, for example, to say, well, this woman, she's very nice and gentle, but she doesn't let people walk all over her, because it's a choice she's making to be collaborative. But at the same time, she is driven, she is ambitious, that's what she wants to do. And so going into these kind of assembly of characters that we all have, and all of us have them in different notches. Some people are more analytical than others who are more maybe intuitive, will help as well inform who you are and what makes you happy as well. And maybe that could be the beginning of defining success for yourself as well. It's not only about success being a measure of a percentage of sales increase over the last 3 years. It could be, if you want that, but it could also be something much more profound, much more individual, and something you have some say on, something only you are responsible, without anything on the outside coming and informing. It's like, oh, you're a failure, you're a success. No, maybe I haven't hit, company's objectives, but I think I feel pretty successful because I pushed myself, because I'm proud of myself, because I did better than 2 years ago, because I overcame self-limitations, and because of a lot of different things. And so the whole point for me is to go to a place where I teach my clients to have a different definition of success. So of course, there is the objectives. Of course, all need to make money and we all need to stay employed. And that's a given. I absolutely not telling anyone to leave their jobs and, start doing bohemian things. It work for some people, but not for many people, especially when you live in cities. And so there's that added hurdle as well. But to find that artist, to find that bohemian in you, and to bring it to the workplace, so that you're not rejecting pieces of yourself because somebody said it's not appropriate to be artistic or to wear, or I don't know, like a red scarf in a bag, because that's who you are. And that's also your own personal signature. And when you start enhancing this personal signature, then you stand out. And when you stand out, you're a leader.
I just had a realization that it's no matter what the job is, right? The job is just what you're going through the motions and doing, but how you show up. And I loved the words alignment and embodied, because I think the alignment is the curiosity part of figuring out, what do I even align with, teasing it apart from the cultural and family programming. But then when you give yourself permission to embody and reconnect with those abandoned pieces of ourselves, you really exude a sense of magnetism, and you exude a sense of confidence and leadership that is intoxicating.
Yes.
Right? And so it's an inside job, and it can show up at work in many different ways. But the more that we can not just even re-identify with ourselves, and then accept those parts of ourselves. And how can I show up as I walk through the hall from my office to my boss's office, for example, in integrity with that person that I am?
Exactly. And my main point as well is you are the same person. Whether you are at home, whether you're waiting for the bus or you're going to speak with the boss, you are the same person. You may change masks, you may react or behave differently, and it's totally normal. That's part of communication in society. But you are the same person. And as long as you reject certain parts of you, as long as you hate certain parts of you, because I'm a bohemian and I'm supposed to be the CEO of a bank, it cannot happen. Something is an emotion or a messenger is going to show up and say, hey, you forgot about me. There is a reason why I exist. And the whole idea is exactly that, is to embody. It's more about finding something solid inside of you, like a stronger core, so that when things happen, because it's life and obstacles and challenges will happen, when things happen, you have the strong core that you can go back to. You have a sense of pride. You have a sense of self. So pride is a good thing as well. It's important to be proud of oneself. There's a lot of, ego is bad and I don't know. No, ego helps us survive. Without ego, I live in New York City. It's not a good idea. Finding ways to get out of the survival mode and back into this embodiment, which is just integrating, is nothing more than the integration. And again, life is going to throw stuff at us, and we're going to be shaken and stirred and all sorts of things. But the idea is, when we have these tools, or when we have the self-awareness, is like, okay, I feel really bad. I'm crying. I'm wailing for a whole day. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, now that emotion is out, what can I do about it? And then we tap into this inner resourcefulness. We tap into this kind of qualities that we know we are good at. And generally it's an action of some sort. And as we take this action, we realize, well, actually, I'm a pretty decent person. When we act in integrity, when we refuse something that, when we do it really from the heart, really from integrity, when we say, I don't want to do this because this doesn't sit well with me. It's just, it doesn't feel okay. We don't do it because we rebel against the other person, or we want to, hate that person and make them wrong. But when we do something out of real core and we stand in that truth, then obstacles can come and go, challenges can come and go. When you look back in hindsight, you realize, okay, maybe I didn't go home with the $1 million prize, but honestly, I feel good about myself right now, and I'm okay. Mm-hmm. I'm a decent human being. I like myself.
I think in that process of redefining success, it's shifting the leverage point from outside of yourself. And it's important to take that into consideration, obviously, because if you want to keep your job, you could, that might be helpful. But that doesn't determine how I feel about myself. If I know that I'm checking in and I'm doing my best, I'm showing up the best that I possibly can, even if it's only 20%, because that's all I have that day, it's intentionally switching the leverage point of, I get to give myself that feedback that I like it when it comes from my environment or those around me, but I'm not going to leverage my self-worth on that.
Exactly. It's about having several definitions of success. We're very attached to a meaning. Like, success is this. And then I have a client, for example, who's like, I don't vibe with the word success anymore. Like, sure you do, but maybe not the definition you had. Maybe the success is, as you said, Rebecca, is waking up in the morning and, not feeling good about a lot of different things. And yet you show up, and you show up because it's part of your integrity. You show up because this is the responsibilities you have decided to take, and because maybe other people depend on you showing up, and you do it. And that is success. Because the idea here is this little light bulb that we all have inside of us. I don't know how to call that. Some people call it your soul, your inner self, whatever it is. But there's this little light bulb when, I'm sure we all have felt that. And the idea is to feel it more and more. When we do something that feels aligned, again, I don't have any other word. When we do something that feels good, and I don't mean good necessarily something good. Sometimes it's making a very difficult decision or having a difficult conversation. Sometimes this is what good is. Mm-hmm. But when we have this conversation from a place of centeredness, from a place of not taking things personally, from a place where we come from our whole being, our authentic being, then there's something that feels good inside. And that is success for me. I feel good about how I showed up. I feel good about being able to be honest with that person and not fearing that they're going to shout at me, or if they shout at me, then I stay calm and I respond. And if it goes overboard, I stop the conversation. But having these little tools where at any given time, we don't create more issues than, solving them. And I think sometimes I have this dream that we're all going to learn how to talk to each other from a place of honesty, because it's not always the case. There is always an agenda, and it's normal. We're humans. But there is an agenda that is personal and that is about self-preservation and survival. And then there is the agenda that pushes that same agenda way too far, where the other person becomes the enemy for absolutely no reason, where we feel we have been stripped of something or we can lose something that maybe the other person doesn't care about. And we go into these kind of conflicts. And for me, it's about, why don't we sit and understand, what do you really want in your life? What is, again, how do you feel successful? And you realize that despite a lot of differences, ethnic, cultural, background, economic, most of the people, they just want safety. They just want a nice life. They just want to enjoy what they have without having to permanently being on guard. And to do that, there's this instrument of communication that we use where we come from a real place of compassion, from a real place of, it's not about me being right and you being wrong, but it's about a place where we can find a middle way where we're both equally satisfied. And that would be good enough for today, for example.
Mm-hmm. I think that really speaks to the internal struggle that we all experience from the ego, that is absolutely necessary and actually is not going away anytime soon. And more of that higher self that's connected with that alignment and that embodiment. And there is just this part of the human experience is that dance between the two. But when we realize that the world is really a mirror, mirroring back our own inner experience, it's like things just calm down for a moment. There's something that I say occasionally is, the holy in me sees the holy in you. The wounded in me sees the wounded in you. And when you can realize that it is, not to get too like metaphysical or esoteric, but there really is a human that is on the other side of you. And when you can see yourself in their eyes and realize that we're all part of this dance together, it starts to soften our guards that we have with the ego, which naturally softens the relationship with someone on the other side that you're dancing with.
Absolutely. For me, it's very simple. If you go into a meeting where you are very angry or you're very frustrated, your tone will say you're frustrated. Your reactivity will say you're frustrated. On the other side, there's another human that you're going to start noticing the frustration in them because they're reacting to your frustration. And so we go into these loops of misunderstanding that don't make any sense. But what if I know I am frustrated, so I have the awareness that I am frustrated. I may or may not know why I'm frustrated. It's fine in itself. We can deal that later. But I'm going to go almost like a clean slate into that meeting. And anytime I feel the frustration in my body, I'm going to stop for 1 second. I usually tap on my side for me because I'm online, so when nobody sees it, when I feel this emotion, it brings me back into my body and tells me, calm down. That has nothing to do with the other person or with you. Calm down. Don't take it personally. Just continue breathing. Be open-minded. Continue listening. What's going on there? And all of a sudden, because we have brought the self-awareness and we have brought this consciousness in a way of what we do and to ourselves, and so all of a sudden we realize, well, the other person is not that bad. They have their struggles. They also have their goals, and sometimes they are pushed to be aggressive. But what if I had this emotional intelligence almost to see that in the other person and to find words to tell the other person, listen, we're not enemies here. We have different objectives. We have different goals. Why don't we start by finding what we have in common? So this will anchor it. And then I will see what's acceptable for me to give away and what's acceptable for you to give away. And if we don't agree, we stop it there. And it doesn't mean that the person is bad. It doesn't mean that I'm bad or that I failed. Actually, it's exactly the opposite. And one of the things that are really important for me in the work that I do is to bring more human into the workplace, is to stop thinking that other people are just resources. They're not resources. A resource is I don't know, some oil, whatever. That's a resource. We abuse that as well. But the resources or the air, that is a resource. But other humans are not resources. They're not just a set of skills. There are people with lives. There are people that we have been put here in that job to connect with, because your job is a vehicle, your job is a conduit. If you don't understand that, you're going to go to work with only wanting to be successful, as in, I'm going to earn my 6-figure whatever, and go home and maybe do your stuff and feeling satisfied, but you're missing out on something. And that something is the joy of working with other people, the joy of co-creating with other people. Even if the co-creation is just one email where people don't agree, but agree to disagree. And the more you go into this idea that, you know, the workplace is not necessarily the ideal workplace, and you know, some of them are very toxic, and I work with a lot of my clients who are unfortunately in these very toxic workplaces. Mm-hmm. Not everybody has the choice to leave. Again, we need money, we need financial safety, but there are ways where you detach from the toxic side and you start building allyship, or you start building friendship, or you start cooperating with people who are on the same page as you. And you're not going to change your corporation, you're not going to change much, but you're going to change your internal state and the internal state of another person. And
mm-hmm. I think also what I've seen with clients is sometimes they really don't have the ability to move from where they're at in a toxic work environment. But when they put the extra emphasis and effort into the relationships outside of work, or their hobbies and things that fill them up outside of that environment, it gives them a little bit more capacity and lightness to be able to continue with something that is toxic, but is at that point in their life just kind of necessary. I think it's easy for people to to feel depleted in toxic environments and then not have the desire to build those outside of work relationships where that's actually what's going to fill you up. So it's important for people to remember that.
Absolutely. It's a two-way thing. It's what you do at work, but if, you know, it's about how much you're giving to this job. If you feel yourself you're giving a bit too much and you're receiving a bit too little, but you cannot quit, then it's about time to revise your relationship, because the relationship with a job is like a marriage, or like, you know, living with someone, right? It can be toxic, it can be nourishing, it can be neutral, it can be a lot of different things and a lot of up and down. But if you are in a toxic relationship with a job and the job is toxic and you tried whatever you could to make it better and it's not working, then you need to cut your losses. And cutting your losses, it means you invest your energy somewhere else. Somewhere where, again, you have this emotional lightness, you have this joy, you have this fun. You see the job as a means to an end. It could be just a paycheck until something better happens. And something better generally happens at some point, because you don't have this kind of unhealthy attachment to it anymore, because it's not giving you what you're giving it. So one of the things as well that I find important, and that's a very good point to emphasize, is that we tend to give a bit too much to work as well. And we get the frustration and the burnout and all of that when we receive too little, because the salary, the paycheck is not enough. We want to be loved, we want to be validated, we want to be seen and heard. And sometimes it's not the function of the job, of the workplace. It's not your boss's job to make you feel seen or whatever. It would be nice to have a boss like this, but not all of them understand that. And so this is when also you build this kind of inner tool where you can be seen and heard and validated internally. And if it's really bad, then you know what? You show up, you get paid, but then you have a life that allows you this growth and that allows you this joy that each of us deserves. It's not, maybe it's a good time for me to say that as well, is that quite often as well, to go back to the shame and judgment in terms of how we function, sometimes there is this idea of no pain, no gain, or I need to suffer, or if I don't work 12 hours a day, I'm a bad person. If you work 12 hours a day, it's for yourself. So, and you do it for yourself, maybe because you want to be promoted, maybe you want to have more money, but you do it for yourself. Don't do it because you want to please your boss. And if you do it because you want to please your boss, which is a choice, then make sure you have something in return. Because this is where frustrations come from when we give, especially women, again, we give a lot to other people because they use our loyalty, they use our kindness, and then there's the frustration, and from there are a lot of mechanisms that come up as well. So healthy boundaries as well. And maybe that's that for me as a person, that is one of my successes is when I have been able to say no to some certain people, including clients. Sometimes there's this, very few people do that, but sometimes there's the sense of wanting, and it's just like it doesn't work for the moment. So it's a good time to stop. It's a good time not to do that. And then I feel good about myself. I feel a bit of guilt for a while, but then in hindsight, I'm like, no, I actually honored my choices. I honored what I wanted, and that's important. And the other person will survive. Nobody died because somebody told them no.
Well, Mayda, this has been such a rich conversation. If there was somebody listening to this and really struggling like you were, kind of like where you were at that point of kind of that life was telling you things have to shift, and there's a really internal shearing, I think, that happens when we have to shift gears that hard. Is there anything that words of inspiration or words of encouragement talking to that person?
I will say, don't be scared. Don't be scared, because everything is a teacher, everything is a messenger. And your agency and your sovereignty is to act or not on it. If you decide to act, have someone helping you. It could be a spouse, a friend, a coach, a therapist, or maybe just a journal. But find ways for other people to also be part of that journey. I think a lot of it is that we stay in our little corner. We're ashamed of asking for help because I'm supposed to be doing it all by myself. Don't do that. There's a reason why you have these people in your life, but be patient as well. And I'm going to go back to what you said earlier. Don't judge yourself. It's okay not to be 100% high achiever all the time. It's okay to break down. Sometimes it's just a redirection, and most times it's a messenger of something that needs to change in your life. Love yourself as well, because we live on planet Earth and circumstances are not always ideal, but we can find our freedom in these circumstances. And this is your job in ways. Where do I find my freedom? What does that mean to me to begin with? And like success, maybe freedom is something that is very personal to you, and an invitation. And all of these obstacles and life happens is an invitation for you to do something that is actually for your higher good. But you don't see it sometimes because, you're just in the autopilot mode.
I love that. Well, I know there's going to be people listening that are going to resonate exactly with what you're saying and would love to be able to reach out to you. Is there something that you could share with us about the coaching program that you do and how people can reach you? And of course, the links will all be in the episode notes.
Yes. So I coach executives, mid-level to high-level executives, and I have several programs. One of them is geared to leadership. This is for people who are in these positions or are about to be promoted and need a bit of a refresher. And the second one is more a career strategy and finding your way and finding your ideal job, being promoted. You can find me on social media, LinkedIn and Instagram, mostly under Mayda Poc. You can email me at Mayda@MaydaPocCoaching.com. And my website is MaydaPocCoaching.com.
Well, Mayda, it's been such a treat to have you here.
Thank you for
Thank you for
having
your
me.
time.
It's really a pleasure chatting with you.
If you are finding value in these videos or podcasts, it really helps us out if you like, share, comment, or even leave a review. This helps the algorithm put episodes like this and many others in front of the people that really could benefit from it. You are all amazing, and I love hearing from you in my DMs. If there is a topic that you'd love to see covered, please don't hesitate to reach out in my DMs. And until next time, be the change you want to see in the world.